In the books, Penelope Ann Featherington is the third daughter of Portia Featherington, a wealthy widowed mother of 4 girls, Prudence, Philippa, Penelope, and the youngest, Felicity. In the books, Penelope is described as a plump girl with auburn hair and brown eyes who has grown thinner over the years. She is intelligent, something she shares with her younger sister, Felicity, and loves to read, a pastime their mother, Portia, abhors. Unlike her older sisters, Prudence and Philippa, Penelope has no interest in high society. Colin Bridgerton was still a bachelor at 33 when the story begins. The season of 1824 was approaching, and he was considered the most eligible bachelor for young ladies and mothers. Colin and Penelope met in 1812, 2 days before Penelope's 16th birthday. Colin tripped over his horse because of Penelope's hat. Penelope fell in love with Colin but kept it a secret. She became close friends with Eloise Bridgerton, but never revealed her feelings for Colin, who saw her as a sister. Penelope made her debut in London society on April 10, 1813, the same year that Lady Whistledown began to write. 4 seasons have passed, and although Philippa and Prudence have already found husbands, Penelope, who is already 28 years old, still has not found a suitor. Despite knowing that she would never marry Colin, she held on to a little hope until that unfortunate day. While having tea at Bridgerton House with Eloise, Penelope overheard Anthony, Benedict, and Colin talking about her. "I won't marry Penelope Featherington," Colin said. "I never asked her to marry me," replied the woman. Colin apologized without a coherent excuse. Despite the hurtful words, she decided to forget the incident, and they continued their friendship without further issue. Penelope considered herself an old maid in every season, until Colin returned to London in 1824 at the age of 33. They reunited at the Bridgertons' house during a party organized in honor of Violet Bridgerton's birthday. Colin asked Penelope to dance, and she told him not to feel obliged to do so because of her status as an old maid. The boy felt annoyed. He wanted to ask her to dance for his own pleasure, perhaps for the first time. That night, 2 important things happened. Colin began to see Penelope as more than a friend, albeit unconsciously. Lady Danbury offered $1,000 to whoever discovered the identity of Lady Whistledown. After the announcement, Penelope publicly accused Lady Danbury of being Lady Whistledown. This claim earned her the attention of everyone at the ball. While walking to Bridgerton House for tea the next day, Penelope met Colin. He noticed that she had a new air of spontaneity, which she had gained from her encounter with Lady Danbury the night before. They had tea together that day, with Eloise, Hyacinth, Lady Bridgerton, and Kate, who was accompanied by her 2-year-old daughter, Charlotte. During the meeting, they discussed the possible identity of Lady Whistledown and even theorized that Penelope could be her. The following day, Penelope attended tea once more, but this time she did not encounter Colin on her way. Upon arriving at the Bridgertons' residence, she was escorted to the family's private sitting room. While there, she could not resist reading one of Colin's travel diaries. A few minutes later, Colin found her looking extremely angry. However, his anger dissipated when he accidentally cut himself, breaking the tension of the moment. As Penelope helped him with his wound, she apologized. She also expressed her admiration for the way he wrote and described the places he had visited. Colin was seeing beyond what he knew of Penelope and began to understand that she was not the same girl he had known years before. He found her more attractive. That same day, he confessed his frustration with his future to her. Colin felt inadequate compared to his successful and talented older brothers, believing he wouldn't leave a mark on the world. Penelope was angry with him for not valuing what he had. She left indignantly after their conversation, but they later apologized at a party. 2 days later, Colin knocked on Penelope's bedroom door. He seemed more enthusiastic than usual and confessed that he suspected Eloise, Penelope's younger sister, of being Lady Whistledown. Eloise had been locking herself in her room for hours at a time, and when she emerged, her fingertips were stained with ink. Penelope confidently insisted that Eloise was not Lady Whistledown. Colin was worried that she was, and because of Lady Danbury's proposal, she would be found out and disgraced. as everyone hated Lady Whistledown. Colin expressed his worry to Penelope that the rumor of Eloise being Whistledown could affect his honor. Colin's concern was that even a simple gossip could jeopardize his reputation. He gave an example to help her understand. "Imagine if I were to tell someone that I seduced you," he said. "You would be disgraced forever." The power of words is remarkable. Penelope and Colin were both speechless as he realized how attractive she was and wanted to kiss her. She then asked him for a favor, to which he nodded. "Could you please kiss me?" she asked. Penelope assured Colin that kissing someone was all she wanted, as she hadn't kissed anyone since she was an old maid and could easily die tomorrow without having done so. Colin couldn't refuse and kissed her for the first time. According to Colin, it was the best kiss. Penelope responded with a simple, "Thank you," which angered Colin, causing him to storm off. Colin met Eloise at the Bridgerton house hours later. He confronted her with his theory that she was Lady Whistledown. Eloise immediately denied it, claiming that she spent her evenings writing letters in her room. When her brother asked her to whom, she blushed and refused to say. A few days later, Lady Whistledown announced in her usual gossip sheet that she would retire. On that day, Lady Danbury and the protagonist met at a party. Lady Danbury expressed her interest in helping the protagonist achieve happiness. However, their conversation was interrupted by Cressida Couper, who publicly announced that she was Lady Whistledown. After the announcement, the room fell silent. Cressida, who inherited her late husband's debts after being widowed, approached Lady Danbury to claim the $1,000 reward. However, both Lady Danbury and Penelope expressed disbelief that she was Lady Whistledown. They demanded proof, which she promised to provide within 2 weeks. Colin went to the party to ask for Penelope's forgiveness. However, he didn't get a chance to speak to her amidst all the commotion. The next day, he went to her house. As he arrived, he saw her riding alone in a hired car on the corner of the street. This seemed suspicious to him since she wasn't accompanied by any maid or any of her sisters. Therefore, he decided to follow her. Penelope took the car to an obscure church in London where Colin saw her hide an envelope in one of the chairs. He confronted her and found a letter from Lady Whistledown for a new publication stating that she was not Cressida Couper. Colin realized that Penelope was Lady Whistledown. He asked her angrily why she planned to write in her column that Cressida was not Lady Whistledown. She explained that she couldn't let someone else take the credit. Colin made the girl get into his car to take her home. On the way, he argued with her, insisting that she let Cressida keep the identity of Lady Whistledown. This would allow her to avoid being disgraced and hated by London society. The girl replied that Cressida had not been disgraced when she confessed herself as Lady Whistledown. Colin retorted, "She is different." The answer hurt Penelope's feelings. She wondered if she was different because she was more beautiful and popular. Colin realized what a lousy answer he had given her. He wanted to keep her from feeling bad about what a fool he had been. He kissed her and told her how beautiful she was. He allowed himself to accept that he loved her. Upon arriving at her house, he assisted Penelope in making herself presentable. She was wearing her dress below her breasts, which he helped adjust. As she prepared to go downstairs, he announced that he would accompany her. Confused, Penelope asked if he was going inside with her. He replied, holding out his hand for her to exit the car. "For God's sake, Penelope, are you going to marry me or not?" Minutes later, Colin and Penelope entered the Featherington family visiting room. To Colin's dismay, all of Penelope's sisters and their husbands were gathered there. Portia initially thought that Colin was going to ask for Felicity's hand, the youngest daughter. She insisted that Penelope leave the room, leaving her alone with Colin. However, Colin became angry and expressed his firm decision to ask for Penelope's hand, not Felicity's. A few days later, preparations for the wedding began. Both families were informed of the new engagement. However, Penelope was convinced that Colin liked her, but she doubted that he loved her. Colin, who had never been in love before, was confused about how he could know if he loved her. Therefore, he decided to visit his sister Daphne, with whom he had always been close since they were only a year apart. At 32 years old, Daphne was already a mother of 4 children, aged 10, 9, 8, and 7. When Colin visited, he asked Daphne how she knew when it was love. Despite this, she was confident that she and her husband still understood each other. She replied that she didn't know, that it was different for each person. The following day, the Bridgertons hosted Colin and Penelope's engagement ball. During the dance, something completely unexpected occurred. A group of children entered with a new laddie Whistledown column. Colin had already read it when he discovered Penelope. It drove him crazy because he thought the matter had been forgotten and his girlfriend had moved on. However, Penelope had actually instructed the editor to publish the news a few days after their engagement ball, but for some reason, it was published during the ball. After announcing their engagement, Colin took Penelope to his room to discuss what had happened. Penelope explained her point of view and expressed her pride in her work as Lady Whistledown. However, Colin was more concerned about the potential repercussions if her identity was discovered. In reality, he was jealous of her bravery and success as Lady Whistledown, which he lacked in his own diaries. After their suffocating argument, they ended up kissing. This led to their first night together in Colin's room. Colin then convinced his mother and Lady Featherington that Penelope might be pregnant, so they decided to bring the wedding forward. A few days later, they were married in what Penelope described as a wonderful wedding. The honeymoon was also enjoyable. Although the Lady Whistledown issue seemed to be in the past, Colin would rage every time Penelope brought it up, making her think he was embarrassed by her. One afternoon, Colin showed Penelope his journals and asked for her opinion. She loved what she read and encouraged him to publish it. He told her that it was not easy and that they needed corrections. His curiosity was piqued, and he asked her how she had started writing as Lady Whistledown. Penelope told him that it had all started in her first season. She was unhappy and started describing the parties she went to as a way to let off steam and have fun. One day she forgot to hide them, and her mother's lawyer found and read them. The man found it highly entertaining. He was responsible for organizing the printing and distribution of the Lady Whistledown sheets. Colin admired Lady Whistledown's work and asked for help correcting her diaries for publication. Later, while Penelope corrected one of Colin's writings, Cressida unexpectedly visited her at home to blackmail her. After discovering Penelope's anonymous identity in Lady Whistledown's last sheet, Cressida demanded £10,000 in exchange for her silence. Penelope had saved this money throughout her career as Lady Whistledown and refused to give it up. When Colin arrived, she explained the situation to him. He promised to help her and solve the problem. However, she had to go to Anthony for advice. Hours later, Colin sent Penelope a note informing her that they would meet later at the Hastings house, where her sister Daphne was having a dance. At the event, the Bridgerton family watched her until Colin arrived and revealed his plan: to expose her as Lady Whistledown. Penelope initially refused Colin's proposal, fearing that it would bring disgrace upon him. However, Colin reassured her that he didn't care about society's opinion and that they could start a new life in the countryside. He also mentioned that Anthony would support them, which was a significant advantage in London society. Eventually, Penelope agreed, and during a touching and romantic speech, Colin revealed to the 500 guests at the ball that Penelope was Lady Whistledown, and he was proud of her. A year later, Colin published his first book. Additionally, he and his partner were expecting their first child. Please note that this text contains a spoiler for Eloise's story, To Sir Philippe with Love. The book Seducing Mr. Bridgerton concludes the story of Colin and Penelope. However, in the 8th and final book, a second epilogue reveals how Eloise discovered that Penelope was Lady Whistledown. At the time of Colin's revelation, Eloise had eloped to Sir Philip Crane's house, where she would later marry. The second part of the story begins when Colin and the other Bridgerton siblings return from searching for Eloise at Sir Philip's house. The Bridgerton family travels to Eloise's new home for her wedding to Sir Philip. Colin and Penelope ask the family to keep the news of Lady Whistledown a secret from Eloise on her special day. As Eloise waits for the carriage to take her to the church, she has a conversation with Penelope. Eloise tells her best friend that she loves her future husband and is not marrying him simply because her brothers forced her to, although they did. After the ceremony, Colin tells Penelope that it is time for her to tell her sister the truth. Both girls then enter a room where Penelope confesses to him that she is Lady Whistledown. Eloise replies that she already knows. Penelope is stunned and asks how Eloise found out. Eloise reveals that Hyacinth told her, in exchange for $20. Colin and Penelope decide to spend the night at the inn, hoping to conceive their first child after saying goodbye to Eloise.